Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 3, Episode 37. The Steelers traveling to Tampa Bay to face the red-hot Buccaneers on Monday Night Football this week. In prime time, it's going to be an exciting one. We'll get to the game in a minute, but first things first, a lot of buzz about the Steelers the last really week and a half, really all season, especially when it comes to Antonio Brown. He had quite an interesting preseason with the whole what was it? He called out the Steelers reporter, and then he supposedly threatened another reporter on ESPN last week, or an ESPN reporter last week, and then now he responded on Twitter this past Monday, I believe, to a former Steelers PR guy who tweeted saying that Brown was basically should consider himself lucky that he was drafted by the Steelers and had Big Ben because he earned him a lot of money. So Brown responded, well, let's find out, trade me. And then he proceeded to not show up to work on Monday, which caused, just like a firestorm of nonsense and all these questions about Mike Tomlin losing the locker room, and just it was a hard week to be paying attention to the Steelers. And honestly, it was kind of hard to listen to national, sports talk all week because they were just nonstop talking about this. Austin, what did you think about the whole thing?
I thought it was stupid. I still don't really know why Antonio Brown missed work on Monday. He said it was a personal issue, but I kind of want to know why. What was the problem? But I don't know. I guess it's a personal reason for a reason. But other than that, I thought it was stupid, just like him tweeting that. Like I said last week, I just think he should have just ignored it and moved on, or that was not the right way to approach it, even if he did replies, like I said last week again. And really, I want to know what the punishment is for it. He was apparently punished internally. Mike Tomlin said he wasn't going to discuss it, but he also, before that, he said that he wasn't going to be held out of the game at all. So, I want to know what they did. Apparently, fine has been the words being thrown around, but I don't know. I feel like there would be a record of a fine somewhere if they did. Isn't that something that has to be kept track of? Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. Maybe because it's not from the NFL, you don't have to keep track of the fines, and with guys like Adam Schefter wouldn't see that. But I feel like all fines, they come up, this guy got fined for this in the game, this guy got fined for this, for not showing up to practice or something. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, usually you see something regarding, team conduct policy or something like that, but I think only league-wide, league-handed-down fines are recorded. But it's really just annoying, to be honest with you. And, we've been seeing a lot of stuff on social media, and the Steelers, there's no way you can enforce a no social media policy, and I understand that, and I'm not saying they should do that. What the Steelers should try to do is they should try to educate their players a little bit more about the whole fact that when you tweet something or post something, it is there forever, and you can delete it, but if someone gets a screenshot, like someone got a screenshot of Brown's tweet to that reporter, it's not going away. It's there forever. That you have to understand that social media can be a really great thing. You look at Brown and Smith-Schuster, you can see how they advertise themselves, endorse themselves. It's really a great way to help promote their brands, and I'm very happy to see that. But at the same time, when you do something like what Brown did, where you tweet something like "trade me," it's opening up a can of worms. It causes a huge stir that really doesn't need to be anything like that. It's just a heat of the moment thing that could have been avoided. There are better ways to handle that, and it's not like he added Antonio Brown on Twitter. Brown either heard of that from somebody else or went looking for it. So he has to be smarter about that, and it's really frustrating to see talk about Mike Tomlin losing the team, because it's just, what the real big thing is. Coaches are losing the locker room when they're not winning games. But if the Steelers win these next 2 games, what will the narrative be, Austin?
Oh my gosh, it would be completely different. Jeez, I don't even want to theorize about that. That would be terrible.
Well, I'll tell you what it'll be. It'll be Mike Tomlin got the locker room back. And I don't know about you, but based on what I've seen throughout NFL history, if you lose a locker room, you don't get it back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that usually, but I mean, no, you're right. I can't even think of an example where a team pulled it back together after the locker room was lost. You're right. You're right on that.
I mean, we'd probably have to do more research, but I don't believe Mike Tomlin has lost the locker room, and based on other things I've heard, he basically laid down the law the other day. So the big thing is this team has to get back to winning games. David Todd on Twitter, former radio host in Pittsburgh for Sports Talk, mentioned that the big difference with the Steelers' record since 2016, when they were 4-5, is 22-6-1. Since Ryan Shazier went down, they are, let's see, I think it was, I forget the record, so let's see. I'm thinking really quick here. I'll have to do some research, but the Steelers lost, obviously, they're 0-1 this year. They lost to the Jaguars, so that's 2 losses. They lost to the Patriots, that's 3. They beat the Browns, and they beat the Texans, and they beat the Ravens. So they're 3-2-1 since Ryan Shazier went down with an injury. And the biggest difference is the Steelers were giving up 17 points a game when he was on the field, and since then, the Steelers have given up 28 points a game. It has nothing to do with the locker room. It has everything to do with the defense struggling, at least in most cases. I mean, you look at those losses, you talk about the Patriots game, yeah, the offense scored 24, but the defense struggled in key moments in that game. We already know the Jaguars game and the Chiefs game last week were basically carbon copies of each other. And then the Browns, they played well against the Browns, but that was the Browns with Tyrod Taylor. So it's a mess, and it doesn't need to be, and it's not entirely accurate either. So it's on all fronts, it's just really frustrating. So, all right, let's move on to the injury report. Austin, what is it looking like for the Steelers?
David DeCastro has been listed as doubtful for Monday Night Football with a fractured hand. We shall look for B.J. Finney to be back out there again this week. Moving to the defense, Morgan Burnett is with a groin is listed as doubtful after downgrading from limited participation on Thursday to not participating on Friday. And Terrell Edmonds is likely getting the start there. Marcus Allen will also likely be active for the first time this season because of that. Going back to the offense, Marcus Gilbert is a game-time decision after not practicing all week. Don't expect him to play, though. He is listed as doubtful. Look for either Filer or Okorafor to get the start here. I think the Filer is edging Okorafor out right now, but they could change their mind last second. Other than that, Joe Hayden with a hamstring, Marquise Pouncey, which was a coach's decision, Tyson Alualu, shoulder, Ramon Foster with a knee injury, and Stephon Tu with an illness. All practice fully Saturday and should be good to go. None of those guys have an injury designation. They're not questionable. They just all had injuries coming into this week, but they're good. For the Bucs, quarterback Marcus Williams with a hamstring injury, defensive tackle Bo Allen with a foot injury, and surprise defensive tackle Vita Vea, calf, are out. Vita Vea actually was questionable just going into early today, and then he just got downgraded out after I wrote up the injury report, so that was a surprise. And then other injuries include Chris Conti with a knee and Brent Grimes with a groin, but they're questionable. They should be good to go going into this game.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Steelers and Bucs and their history. All-time series, the Steelers and Bucs have played just 10 times. The Steelers own an 8-2 advantage. The last time these two teams played, a very disappointing loss for the Steelers at home to the Mike Glennon-led Buccaneers, a 27-24 loss at home. Because these two teams are in different conferences, they've never played in the postseason. The fun fact Austin was kind enough to look up for us today is that the first time these two teams played was the Buccaneers' inaugural season in 1976. That's commonly thought of as the Steelers' best season ever. The Steelers beat them 42-0 in their first ever matchup. The Buccaneers went on to finish that season at 0-14, and they finished with a net of just 11 passing yards on the day. Austin, you know what else I learned about the 1976 Steelers? This is just kind of a tangent here, but the Steelers have given up a total of 9 touchdowns on the season already. 6 last week, 3 the week before. They gave up 14 touchdowns in all of 1976. I know it's a different era, but is that not crazy?
That's so impressive. You're averaging less than a touchdown a game. That is absolutely insane. But, I mean, it makes sense when you shut out 2 teams in a 2-week span, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, the Steelers' defense of 1976, well known for having 5 shutouts total that season and 3 in a row, and only, I believe it was 29 points against after the first 5 weeks of the season. That's ridiculous. But in any case, let's get back to the game. The Steelers' defense this year quite far from the team it was, or from the team it was back in 1976. It's an offensive team now, and the Pittsburgh Steelers had a pretty good offensive outburst last week, 35 on offense, en route to 37 points in total. They've got a similar matchup as far as the passing game goes. It looks like they'll be in pretty good shape, but I mean, the Bucs still have some pretty good players, Austin. What do you see from the Buccaneers defense? Where do you think the Steelers can have success?
Well, I think that the Steelers are going to have success mostly against their defensive backs. I would say that I would say that, to go off on a tangent for a second, I would say that the Saints and the Steelers offenses are pretty similar in how good they are. Steelers have the edge at wide receiver, but the point of this is that the Buccaneers gave up 40 points to the Saints. And I don't see a reason why the Steelers can't follow suit, especially now that the Buccaneers are more hurt on defense now than they were in Week 1. They don't have starters Vernon Hargreaves and Bo Allen like they did against the Saints. They will get the Buccaneers are going to get Brent Grimes back, though, and he seemingly always hangs around in the league. He's never been amazing to me. He's just always been okay. I mean, he had a pretty good season like 3 seasons ago, but still, Brown and Smith-Schuster shouldn't have a problem when that's going to be probably their best corner out there. I'm not exactly afraid of the likes of Carlton Davis or Ryan Smith. Some of y'all might not even recognize those names. Like, these guys are pretty deep on the roster. Like, the Bucs defensive backs are not very good. Who I am going to be scared of on their defense, though, is Quan Alexander. Easily one of my favorite middle linebackers in the league. The man is disruptive and fast. I'm going to worry about when he's matched up with the Steelers tight ends in this one, because he's actually fit for the job of covering tight ends and could probably shut them down one-on-one. That being said, I don't expect a big game out of Steelers tight ends like last week. I think it's going to be hard in that regard, and Quan is going to be hard to rush against as well, especially with Gerald McCoy up the middle. But rushing in this game doesn't have me as concerned. Like I said, the Bucs are missing their other starting defensive tackle for this game, and their defensive line really isn't much to write home about in my mind. I think James Conner should be good enough to have a good game on them, even with Alexander McCoy up the middle. But next, I want to talk about offensive line. I won't lie, I am a little worried for them in this one. The Bucs pass rush last year was terrible, but they definitely improved by adding Vinnie Curry and JPP. And the Steelers don't have all reliable Chris Hubbard anymore. Filer or Chukwuma Okorafor are likely getting the start at right tackle, with Gilbert listed as doubtful. I don't think either of those guys are going to get destroyed when they start, really. But the Buccaneers only have 4 sacks so far this year, and 2 of them are from up the middle. One came from Quan Alexander, and the other came from Gerald McCoy. But they played 2 very good offensive lines in the Eagles and Saints. With the Steelers' banged-up line, they may be able to do some more damage than they have in the past 2 games, but that wraps up for offensive line. Really, I've talked about everything besides quarterback. That leaves Roethlisberger, and it's really going to be about getting his deep ball back to par. He could light up the Bucs defense if he completes his deep balls that he's been missing. and also fixes his connection with AD, which are sort of the same problem. But we will see what Roethlisberger we get going into this one. He tends to do good on Monday Night Football, so maybe that will help. As for you, what are you looking for in the offense in this game, and who are you scared of on the defense for the Bucs?
Well, similar to you, I think the Steelers are going to get most of their success through the passing game, but the running game is going to be a little more tougher for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I still think they can find some success. At the end of the day, when you give up 40 points and then 21 to a Nick Foles-led offense at home, that's not very good. A lot can be placed on the fact that they don't have Brent Grimes. He has not played yet this year. He's dealing with a groin injury, like you mentioned. The secondary has been pretty suspect for the most part, besides safety Chris Conte. And also, for the most part, Conte is the only other real veteran on the backside there. Grimes is 35, and I think Conte is 30 himself. Everyone else is 25 or younger, so that's a young group back there. And they've been pretty suspect this year. Even though Antonio Brown has been on the mend and recently, caused a stir, which we just talked about, I have to think he's going to lead the Steelers receivers into a favorable matchup this week. Look for him and Juju Smith-Schuster, who's been the Steelers' best player through 2 weeks, to have a big day. And hopefully, I'm hoping really that James Washington can build off a performance in which he really should have had 3 catches last week, but he finished with 1 because of penalties. But I'm thinking it's going to be a good game for those guys. I think Roethlisberger's trust in Washington is growing, and that's something that's really good for the offense. It should help open it up. But again, the key is the deep ball. Looking at the rest of the Bucs defense, starting at the linebacker position, they have 2 former Pro Bowlers, as Austin mentioned, in Quan Alexander and Levante David. They're going to be difficult to crack in the running game because they're very good downhill, and they're athletic enough to cover the tight ends and running backs in the passing game. Despite Jesse James' career day last week, I wouldn't expect him to have another big one this week. His 24 yards per catch average is not sustainable at all. Lastly, up front, the Bucs have a pretty interesting collection of guys up front for the front four, but really it's more names than it is production for the most part. The big concern, though, is Gerald McCoy inside, because he really is a game wrecker out there. Especially with B.J. Finney likely to start on the inside, he has to be ready to be able to man up on him. I really think of McCoy as one of the more underrated interior defensive linemen. Because of the fact he plays in Tampa, no one really talks about him, but I think of him on a similar level as someone like Geno Atkins. I really think that highly of him. On the outside, the Steelers are going to be seeing a lot of Jason Pierre-Paul and Vinny Curry, and honestly, I'm not super worried about either. Vinny Curry's kind of a big name, but he only has 1 season with more than 4 sacks in a season, and that came way back in 2014. He's decent, but I wouldn't be too concerned about him. Although, then again, the injury to Marcus Gilbert will complicate matters. Pierre-Paul, on the other side, is the best pass rusher on the team, and while he's still solid, he's just not the same player he was before that fireworks accident he had a few years ago. The injury to Gilbert means the Steelers could roll with both B.J. Finney and Chukwuma Okorafor / Matt Filer, as Austin mentioned. The Buccaneers have been good at stopping the run this year, and I'd expect that to continue this week, especially with potentially 2 reserve linemen in the game for the Steelers. Luckily, the aerial attack coupled with the Bucs' suspect secondary could make a good day for the offense. The key, as we've both mentioned already now, is the deep passing game for Roethlisberger. He only hit on, I think, 1 deep pass, more than 20 yards down the field last week. If he can get 2 to 4 of those, at least the deep balls, I think the Steelers should be okay. On the other side, this is the real matchup to watch out for the Steelers. Last week, shredded by Patrick Mahomes, 6 touchdowns against. What are they going to do differently? And is there any other concern on the ground that maybe we haven't seen because it's all been about Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I honestly don't know what the defense is going to do going into this game. It's just not very good looking, not good at all. Fitzpatrick has surprised everybody thus far this season because apparently he's revealed himself as the second coming of Jesus Christ in quarterback form. He's currently leads the NFL in passing yards with over 800 yards in just 2 games, 8 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. And I don't know if you guys saw that interception, but that was a deflection. If you watch, it is 100% on O.J. Howard. That literally, O.J. Howard was open, somehow caught the ball and like threw it upwards. That was terrible. Ryan Fitzpatrick should not have an interception on his stat sheet, but I don't expect Fitzmagic to slow down this game. The Steelers' defense is abysmal at best. Terrell Edmonds is being forced into a starting role, and it looks like Cody Sensabaugh is going to be a starting quarter in this game. So we have a good start thus far with those two things happening. Really, the Sensabaugh thing isn't that bad since he couldn't have done worse than Artie Burns did last week. At least I don't think so, but still. You saw what being able to spread the ball to several different targets did to the Steelers this past week, and now they face Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, Chris Godwin, and O.J. Howard. Mike Evans is the best receiver, but like last week, I'm scared of the fastest receiver, and that's Deshaun Jackson. Jackson is sort of overperforming right now. He leads the league in receiving yards on only 9 catches, but it's because of his blazing speed that he has so many yards. I'm scared for the Steelers defensive backs to go against him because of that. But that's not to downplay how good Mike Evans is, though. I sort of hope Joe Hayden follows Evans around, but that's probably not going to happen. The Steelers don't typically shadow a guy. But I would also feel good about Hilton being on Mike Evans because despite Hilton's size, Hilton is the Steelers' best defensive back at breaking up passes. Moving on to the other wide receivers, Chris Godwin is also a guy to worry about as he has been pretty solid for the Bucs so far this year. So with 3 good receivers, the Steelers are kind of in trouble. The Bucs also have O.J. Howard, but I really don't think too highly of him. I think he only has decent stats because Fitzmagic has been throwing so much every game. He only has 5 catches. It's 5 catches for 150 yards. Like, it's a lot of yards, but it's really only because of Fitzmagic, I'm going to be honest with you. And seeing that one interception was completely on him, I don't think highly of O.J. Howard. I'm already thinking he's a bust after 1 year, but another thing that concerns me with this defense is going to be the pass rush. The Bucs offensive line is really good. They've only given up 2 sacks when they faced Cameron Jordan and the Eagles' great defensive line. So that doesn't really make me exactly feel good. I have no hope for Bud Dupree in this one. He's not going to be able to do anything in the pass rush department. You may as well just throw Chicolo in there when you plan to rush Fitz. Obviously, that's a stupid thing. And obviously, you wouldn't just make guys be out there just for pass rushing because it would be obvious, but it's mostly just because I don't trust Bud Dupree. But I really don't have much hope for the pass rush as a whole after seeing their terrible performance last week against a much weaker offensive line. And it may be rough again this game. It's really going to be on the big-name guys like Hayward and Watt to make anything happen. And I'm not exactly confident. But against the rush, the Steelers should be fine. I don't think too highly of the Buccaneers running backs. But now that I say that, watch that Peyton Barber has 200 yards and 2 touchdowns out of nowhere. But as of right now, they aren't doing so hot. The running backs, Shaquiz Rogers and Peyton Barber. But what do you have to say about the defense going into this game?
Well, I'll get to the good news first. The good news is that the Steelers have never lost to a team when Ryan Fitzpatrick has started at quarterback. I believe the number is 0-5 for Fitzpatrick. I know there were 2 games against the Bengals in 2008. The game against the Bills, which I was at, where Stevie Johnson dropped that touchdown pass in overtime before blaming God for giving him bad hands. And then there was the start against the Texans on Monday Night Football a few years ago. But regardless, there's that and the fact that the Steelers really can't play that much worse than they did last week, at least on pass defense, right? Right?
No, they can't play worse than that.
Statistically, the Buccaneers, I don't know if you heard this, they had the toughest schedule in NFL history through 3 games to start a season this year.
Wow, I actually didn't hear that. I didn't know that.
Because they have the highest win total. I forget the exact number of wins. I think it's 37 wins for the first 3 teams because they faced, the Eagles and Steelers, who both had 13, and then how many did the Saints have last year?
Well, that would mean 11 if it was 37. I just did my math right. Yeah, it would mean they had 11.
The 11 sounds right for the Saints too, but that's a really tough start, and the Bucs have a chance to come out of this with a 3-0 start, and largely because of the play of their quarterback, not Jameis Winston, but as you mentioned, Ryan Fitzpatrick. The definition of a journeyman, Ryan Fitzpatrick is on his 7th NFL team. He went from a backup to to the former number one pick in Jameis Winston to, with the suspension, he got a chance to start, and now all of a sudden he looks like he's going to be the guy that's starting even after Winston comes back. And that's understandable when you have 2 back-to-back weeks with 4 TDs and 400 yards against 2 playoff teams from the previous season, no less, including the Super Bowl champions. Fitzpatrick has shown throughout his career that he can light it up every now and then. He has, great stretches and bad stretches. But there are reasons to believe that his success is going to continue, and really it starts with the weapons around him. If you thought the Chiefs were the only team in the NFL that had weapons like that, then, well, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. All the Buccaneers have is, a former first-round pick and all-pro Mike Evans at wide receiver, going along with one of the best deep threats of this generation in Deshaun Jackson, who, as you mentioned, is leading the NFL in receiving yards, and a third-round pick from last year in Chris Godwin, who's looked really impressive this year, and that's just the receiving core right there. I didn't even mention the running backs or tight ends. The former first-rounder O.J. Howard, which I'm a little higher on than you, looks like a serious stud in my mind. I like the way he's played this year, and has everyone forgotten about Cameron Brate, the other tight end? The Bucs felt so good about this guy, despite Howard's presence, that they gave him a 6-year deal worth $40 million this offseason. He doesn't even have a catch yet. I mean, what happens when he gets involved? How much better can it get? Oh, it could be a long day for the defense. There's one good thing, though, is that the Bucs have struggled to run the football. And they have some yards, but it's usually not a good yards per carry average. They haven't been very efficient with it. Their backs have been okay in the passing game, but they haven't been outstanding. Really, it's just been throwing to the weapons on the outside and the tight ends in the middle. Because of that, the defense should be able to at least key in on the passing game a little bit. So starting up front, the defensive line, they really got to have a bounce-back day. This is, in my mind, an underrated unit. Austin said that they're a really great offensive line, and really, I think they are, too. I wasn't aware that they were thought of that highly, though. I kind of thought they were underrated. Center Ryan Jansen and former Hobart alum Ali Marpet at right guard make a formidable duo. Hobart, by the way, is a Division III school about 40 minutes from Rochester, New York, where I'm from. So I was really happy to see when he made it to the NFL, and I'm glad to see he stuck around. For the Steelers to have any success on defense, it is going to start up front. Everyone's going to have their eyes on the secondary, but the defensive front has to be able to get it done. Throughout his career, Ryan Fitzpatrick has made it a purpose to not take sacks. He'll throw interceptions. He'll make bad decisions. He'll escape out of the pocket. He'll run around. He will not take sacks, and that's part of the reason why the Buccaneers' sack numbers are so low this year. I'm telling you, I don't know if it's necessarily just because the Buccaneers' offensive line is great. It's because Fitzpatrick gets rid of the ball quickly. So with that in mind, the defense really should not have blitzing and heavy numbers in mind here. It really would just defeat the purpose. If he's going to throw the ball quickly, blitzing that quickly is probably not going to work anyways. So just bring your 4 guys and keep as many guys back in coverage as you can. So that means guys like Hayward and Tuitt and possibly Hargrave, depending on the situation, are going to have to be able to be better in the pass rush than they were last week. And really in the running game, too. They weren't that great last week either. The linebackers should be able to stop the Bucs running backs. Peyton Barber, we haven't seen anything of Ronald Jones, the second-round pick. It's been all Barber and Jaquiz Rodgers, as you mentioned, but they haven't really done all that much right now. The big thing for the linebackers, though, is make sure that they're not put in positions where they're not going to succeed. Like last week, you have them running up the seam with Travis Kelce. Good frickin' luck doing that. But, then again, it's just it's simple with the scheme. Just don't ask them to do things they're going to struggle to do. Bostic and Vince Williams really aren't meant to do things like that, and it showed. Maybe if you have Matthew Thomas out there, okay, maybe, but that's that I'm not expecting him to play in this game either. On the outside, as far as the linebackers go, I expect a better day from T.J. Watt. He was kind of quiet last week, but still made a couple plays. And really, you hammered it home. Bud Dupree, he's got to be better. That might have been the worst game of his pro career last week, and it's time to step it up. Finally, the secondary is going to be facing the most scrutiny. they have the toughest battle, and although they'll probably struggle, I'll almost be happy if there just aren't any communication breakdowns. If they just give up plays because they're facing good players, that's one thing, but it's just so much worse when you give them easy pitch and catch plays. I don't know, am I wrong for saying that? Would you almost be happy if they still gave up 300 yards, but it was like they had to work a lot harder for it?
Oh, yeah. I'd rather see them just get gashed because Mike Evans is great and Deshaun Jackson is fast, and seeing them like just not know what's going on and just be out of place. I would prefer it that way, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we're in agreement there. And I guess let's segue into something else that I know for sure we agree on. The Steelers kept the wrong punter. Hashtag cut Jordan Berry. Oh boy. What is going on this week? The Steelers brought in 2 punters this week and a long snapper, surprisingly enough, and they didn't sign any of them. But what's kind of going on with the special teams room right now?
They're not happy, and they shouldn't be. I'm not exactly sure why they're not happy with Cameron Canaday. Exactly, that surprised me. I guess, you could replace a long snapper quite easily, but with Barry, it's easy to say. Mike Tomlin was complaining about him in preseason. Mike Tomlin now came out and said he brought out 2 now because he realizes that the punting situation is not good. It's just a mess. And like you said, they should have kept Matt Weil. Matt Weil was so good in preseason. And you know what? Matt Weil can kick. Matt Weil can kick field goals as well. So, that's something to consider when Boswell's missing his right now, too. Boswell's in a little bit of a funk, but, obviously, that's mostly a hot take. Matt Weil would never be the kicker, even if he was here. But still, they just pointed to everything. The Steelers are being punished on special teams for not keeping Matt Weil, is my point. The guys are not happy. Matt Weil should have stayed there, and now he's doing great in Minnesota. So, good for Minnesota for getting him, but, it just pisses me off that the Steelers just got rid of him when he was obviously the better one. But, apart from the Steelers room, the Buccaneers also aren't very good at punting. They're ranked 26 on the 7 punts they've had, just 2 spots above the Steelers. The Steelers aren't actually last in terms of just punt, not net punt, but just punting. So this could possibly be the game Switzer rips off a big one, so stay tuned for that. I was honestly surprised that the Bucs even punted 7 times in 2 games. Their offense has been so potent, it almost shocked me that they had 7 punts. But when they do punt, they're not very good at it. But that, circling back to what I just said, that also could be because the Bucs have been moving downfield so easily that he's having short fields to punt from. But anyway, that's really all I have to say about special teams. Do you have anything to add?
Just a little bit. I find it curious the Steelers brought in a long snapper. Do me a favor real quick. Can you identify the whereabouts of one Colin Holba?
He should still be on the Jaguars, I think.
I thought he was cut.
But I will look.
I thought the Jaguars cut him.
Oh, he might be a free agent then. I don't think I've seen anything.
I'm curious as to why they brought in a long snapper, and if you're going to bring one in, why not bring in Holba, right?
Why not? Bring back the guy that was already there and that was drafted in the 6th round.
Who knows? What if they actually did bring him back and for whatever reason he ended up working out this time? It still wouldn't make the draft pick worth it in my mind at all, but still it's just kind of interesting. So the special teams, we already talked about it. We both, especially me, I know I really hammered this home, and I know you did too. Jordan Berry, we were not really happy with his performance last year, and we thought that the Steelers should have kept Matt Weil. And through 2 weeks, I was right so far, and so was Austin. Wile's the 2nd best graded punter by Pro Football Focus right now, while Jordan Berry is ranked dead last. Whether or not you agree with the way Pro Football Focus grades or not, you can't argue with the fact that Berry has been bad. He needs to be a lot better. I know he's been doing directional kicks, especially last week, to keep it away from, Tyreek Hill, but just a lot of short punts. You think of Jordan Berry, at least with that name, it would be kind of a big boom from Berry. It would be a nice alliteration there, but he just not kicking the ball far, and in a situation where you need a big punt or you need one that's more of a hanger, he just delivers a line drive. It's maddening. He needs to be better. This could be his last game with the Steelers. Chris Boswell has to be better too. He missed 5 total kicks last season in PATs and field goals, and he's missed 3 already through 2 weeks. That's not good. He's hurting this football team, and he's got to get it together and fast. So stay tuned. All right, keys to the game. For the Pittsburgh Steelers on offense, they're likely going to have plenty of opportunities to score in this one, but what's going to be the key for them?
Well, the key for this game is going to be connecting on the deep ball. It's time for Roethlisberger to get his stuff together, return to form, and if he does, it will be an easy time for the offense. So that's my key. What's your offensive key for this one?
Don't waste early downs. Last week, the Steelers' offense early drives. The Steelers sputtered for their first 3 drives that amounted to 0 points. The first 2 went backwards, so minus 5 yards, and then the third drive didn't amount to any points either. The Chiefs, on the other hand, had 3 straight drives, touchdown, 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 and they were in a 21-0 hole before the first quarter was over. You have to be able to come out of the gates faster than you did last week, especially when your defense is facing another tough opponent this week. Get a score early, and preferably 2. You can't, at the very least, move the ball in that first drive. You can't waste time early on. For the defense, Austin, what do they got to do? Because they've got another tough matchup this week.
They're going to have to force turnovers. Like, last week they only forced 1 fumble. It was at the end of the game, and it was basically useless. It was basically too late. And with the way they play and how much yardage they give up, they need to make up for that yardage given up somehow. They need to force something. So that's my defensive key. What is your defensive key?
Be responsible. Just fundamentally sound football. This includes communication breakdowns, missed tackles, missed assignments, offsides penalties, and stuff like that, unforced errors. We saw way too many of all of that last week. And they're not going to have any chance if they shoot themselves in the foot. This has to be a game where you have to play perfectly on defense just to give yourself a chance. And they're facing a group that's as talented, if not more talented, on offense than the Chiefs were last week. Last week has to have been a good lesson for them. All right, segueing from keys to the game to X factors, Austin. Who is someone on offense that you're going to be paying close attention to?
It's going to be the starting right tackle, whether it be Matt Filer or Chukwuma Okorafor. This may be the only spot on offense that is sort of a question mark going in, and if whoever starts cannot perform adequately, it's going to be rough. Luckily, they are not the blindside tackle, but still, it's really the only position that I think might struggle in this game because we don't really know how they'll do in a starting role. But who is your offensive X factor?
Mine is James Washington. Austin touched earlier on how important it is for Roethlisberger to reestablish his deep ball. The guy you would expect to be on the receiving end, as you saw on the first pass play of the game last week that was an incomplete pass, was James Washington. And he was finally a part of the offense last week, and I'm hoping, kind of like Juju Smith-Schuster from last season, he kind of gets more and more involved in the offense every week. So I'm hoping to see that again from Washington. On defense, Austin, though, it's going to be a tough one, as we talked about. Who is one guy that needs to really step it up in this one?
I'm making it Cameron Hayward. His performance last week was super lackluster for a player of his caliber. So I'm almost challenging him in this one to do better against an even better unit than he played last week. I think the defense's fate is actually in his hands because I think he might be the only one that might be able to generate anything in this game. I'm really not confident about the defense in this game. Who is your defensive X factor?
Mine is Bud Dupree, and like I was saying earlier, I think last week might have been the worst game of his pro career. I don't think he'll ever be the player we thought we were going to see at the end of 2016, but it's one thing for Bud Dupree to just be a guy out there on the defense. It's another when he makes the defense worse by getting penalties and is just out there doing nothing at all. He has to be better, and I'm not saying that him getting a sack will mean the difference between a win or a loss, but just not being terrible will help. So he's my X factor on defense. Please just play better than you did last week. All right. Before we get into our bold predictions and final score prediction as we typically do, let's look at the NFL slate of games. Starting with Thursday night, the Cleveland Browns, probably the big news around the NFL, finally winners for the first time since Christmas Eve of 2016. And before that, only the second win since week, I believe, 11 of 2015. The Browns are finally winners again, defeating the New York Jets 21-17 in a matchup between Sam Darnold, the third overall pick, and Baker Mayfield, who was forced into action with Tyrod Taylor being injured in the second quarter of that game. Did you get a chance to watch that game at all?
I got to watch only tiny bits and pieces of it.
What are your thoughts with the Browns finally picking up their first win?
I think that this is starting the Baker Mayfield era. I know that Hugh Jackson after the game said that he doesn't know who's starting. He's going to look at the tape, but he had to do that just as a justice to Tyrod Taylor, because you can't just say in a press conference following the game, we're starting Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor's getting benched. But it's going to be Baker Mayfield starting from here on out. The offense was abysmal when Tyrod Taylor was on, and then Baker Mayfield kind of changed around and led them to victory. It's a really, really good game, and I bet all of Cleveland is still celebrating right now. What did you think of the game?
It was definitely very interesting, and we both predicted the Browns would win in this game and cover the 3-point spread, and they did. They won by 4, and it wasn't about as entertaining as a Thursday night football game can be. And the first half was pretty boring. I saw the second half. I feel bad for Tyrod Taylor, but it's clear that Baker Mayfield is the more talented player, and it's his team now. So it was going to happen sooner or later. It's just a little bit sooner than everyone thought. But they're a better team with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. And you're exactly right. That's why Hugh Jackson said what he did. It was just to be, a little tip of the cap to Tyrod for the work that he did. It wasn't anything as though it's not like they aren't going to start Baker Mayfield or anything. But very exciting for Cleveland. And the one reason I was rooting for the Jets, though, is that now the Steelers, although it's, the middle of a football week now, the Steelers currently hold last place alone in the AFC North. So that's not something I'm very used to, and I'm sure none of us are really used to, and I don't like it. So I'd rather that change sooner than later. All right, 1 o'clock games. Let's get right into it. NFC South showdown between the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons. Both teams are at 1-1. The Falcons are getting 1.5 at home. Kind of a critical game for both teams. Who do you like in this one?
I'm going to pick the Saints, even though the Falcons are favored. I think it's because I'm just a Saints fanboy on the side when I'm not a Steelers fan. I really love their team. Michael Thomas, I think, is the second best wide receiver in this league. I'm going to say that now. Michael Thomas has been targeted 30 times, and he has 28 receptions in 2 games. He is the second best receiver in this league, and I say that above Julio, above DeAndre. I say that above Odell. I love Michael Thomas. I can go on and on about him, but I think that the Saints are going to be able to. I don't think the Falcons are going to be able to keep up with the Saints' offense. I think both defenses have been kind of not good. I mean, the Falcons are banged up on defense. It's not really their fault. They lost Deion Jones for 8 weeks. They lost Cam O'Neal for the year. It's going to be rough for them. I just don't think they keep up with the Saints' offense. So I'm going to pick the Saints to win outright. Who do you have in this game?
I am picking the Atlanta Falcons to cover. Look, I just like the Falcons a lot better when they're at home. They really did a good job against the Carolina Panthers last week. That was an impressive win. And I think that you look at their last couple games, their last couple losses, they struggled against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions. And I know that it wasn't a great look, but I think that they're a better team than maybe we thought at the end of the first week. So I think they'll have a slight edge, especially with the way the Saints have played the last couple weeks. Just overall disappointing football, just like the Steelers. And I like the Falcons in this one, so I'll pick them to cover. The 1-1 San Francisco 49ers traveling to Kansas City to take on the red-hot Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, 10 touchdown passes, getting 6.5 points at home for a 1 o'clock start. Who do you got in this one?
I got the Chiefs covering. The 49ers haven't really shown to me that they are a top-tier team. The Chiefs, on the other hand, look like they are a top-tier team. So I'm going to pick the Chiefs to cover in this one pretty easily, too, actually. Who do you have?
I agree with you, Austin. I'll take the Chiefs to cover just because of the fact that, I'm not a huge believer in Jimmy Garoppolo. And on top of that, it's just the Chiefs have been on fire. I don't believe Patrick Mahomes is going to be quite as good as he's been, but I still like him better in this one. 1 o'clock, Oakland Raiders at 0-2, and the Miami Dolphins at 2-0 in Miami. The Dolphins getting 3 points at home. Did anyone really see the Dolphins starting 2-0?
I don't really think so. Their team is pretty bad on paper, but I have them covering this game and advancing to 3-0, which is crazy to think of what I thought of this Dolphins team. I mean, I still don't think they're good. I think they played some easier opponents, so I'm going to just have them cover in this one and beat the Raiders, who, could use a pass rusher, a star pass rusher. But who do you got in this game?
That was a really funny soundbite from John Gruden, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a really funny soundbite. It's one of my favorite things that's happened in the NFL so far.
Oh, man. I'm actually going to take the Raiders to win in this one, just because I think they played really, really well. They played well enough to win last week in Denver, and I don't think highly of this Dolphins team. And I know the Raiders are coming all the way out to the East Coast, but I don't know. I feel like the Raiders have maybe not hit a turning point per se, but I like them. I think they have higher upside than the Dolphins do, so I'll take the Raiders to win outright in this one. The Bills have very little upside at 0-2. They are 16.5-point underdogs in Minnesota, and I'll just jump right into this one. Normally, I would not pick a team to cover such a large spread like I did the Chargers last week. But the Vikings are home, and I feel like that's a place where Josh Allen and the Bills' offense is going to get massacred.
It's just so hard for me. I don't know why. It's going to screw me every week. It really is. And I'm not picking the Bills to win. I just want to say that. But I'm picking the Bills plus 16.5, despite me knowing that it's best for me to just say the Vikings are covering. I don't know why. I don't know why I do what I do. This is going to be the third week in a row I make a pick for the Bills that is really stupid. But I'm just going to bet on them not having Dalvin Cook and Everson Griffin, that it makes it so that they don't blow out the Bills so hard. They might blow them out just by 15 points or 16 points. But, I'm going to pick the Bills plus 16.5. I like to be stupid and wrong, apparently.
All right, another 1 o'clock game. Colts at 1-1 facing the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, also at 1-1. Eagles getting 7 points at home. I think this is going to be a close game, but the Eagles are going to come out on top, so Colts plus 7.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Colts plus 7 as well. Andrew Luck is back. I think Carson Wentz is not going to be as good in his return. I feel like it's going to be a little bit of warming up to do, so I'm going to pick the Colts plus 7 in this one because I think Andrew Luck is going to keep up with Carson Wentz in this one. Just not enough to win, but enough to keep up.
Packers 1-0-1 at the Redskins, who are 1-1. Green Bay's getting 3 points on the road.
I'm going to pick the Packers to cover, even if Aaron Rodgers is injured. I like the Packers more in this one. How about you?
I just don't like the Packers team in general. I know they kept up pretty well last week with the hobbled Aaron Rodgers, but I just think on the road in Washington, I feel like Alex Smith is going to have a pretty good game, and I just think they're going to control the ball with Adrian Peterson on the ground, and they're going to take the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. So I think the Redskins come away with the win outright. Bengals at 2-0 over the Panthers, or against the Panthers, traveling to Carolina at 1-1. The Panthers getting 3 points at home. Vegas not loving the Bengals despite their 2-0 start. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think that the Panthers are going to cover. I think that the Bengals have sort of played easier teams for those 2 wins. And, so I'm going to have the Panthers covering. I think the Panthers are a better team.
I'm in agreement with you there. The Bengals got Andrew Luck in his first start in almost 2 years, and then they got the Ravens at home on a Thursday night football game in week 2. That's not – I know it's a divisional game, but Thursday night games at home are always easier to win. So I'm not a huge believer in the Bengals right now, so I'll take the Panthers to cover. Another 1 o'clock game, Titans 1-1 at the Jaguars 2-0. The status of Marcus Mariota still not known at this time. The Jaguars getting 9.5 at home, though.
Coming off the win against the Patriots, I gotta pick the Jaguars to cover. Like, this team is the early Super Bowl favorite to go for the AFC in my mind. I think that they should be able to blow out the Titans, even though it is a divisional game, and picking divisional games is always finicky and weird. I think that the Titans are just too bad. I think the Titans their team is bad. Derrick Henry is bad. I have to pick the Jaguars covering. What do you have in this one?
Last year, with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, the Titans beat the Jaguars in both games. They swept them. So I'm not saying the Titans are going to win. It really depends on the status of Mariota as opposed to Blaine Gabbert. But if it is Blaine Gabbert, the former Jaguars number 1 pick against the current Jaguars number 1 pick at quarterback, that'll be interesting. But I'll assume Mariota is going to start, and I'll give the Jaguars the win, but it'll be a 9.5 point spread. That's a little too much for me, so I'll take the Titans plus 9.5. Another 1 o'clock game, the Broncos at 2-0, going to Baltimore, who are coming off that Thursday night loss to the Bengals. Baltimore's getting 5.5 at home.
I'm going to take the Broncos plus the points here. I think that the Broncos are a little better than the Ravens in terms of players, talent. Actually, I just think that the Broncos coaches are a little bit inept. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that the Broncos team should be performing better. Talking to a Broncos fan all the time, I kind of developed a feeling like what they think, and I think they all think Vance Joseph is a problem for them. But that being said, I think that the Ravens coaching being better is enough for them to win. So again, I have the Broncos plus the points. What do you have?
I'll take the Ravens to cover. They have a few extra days of rest to prepare for this game, and the Broncos will not be home. I like the Ravens better in this one, so I think they'll cover maybe a little bit of a large spread, but the Ravens are usually a good team at home. Wrapping up the 1 o'clock games, this is going to be my tie prediction of the week. Now that we're 2 weeks through the NFL season, we have 2 ties, so I will now be picking a tie of the week in case there is a tie, and if for whatever reason, if I get it right, then I'll boast about it a little bit. Not a lot, because I shouldn't, but ties, I'd like to hammer home just how much I hate ties in the NFL and how disgusting I think it is. In any case, matchup of 2 0-2 teams, the Giants and Texans. Houston getting 6 points at home. Both teams pretty disappointing despite pretty good amounts of talent on both sides of the ball. I'm going to take the Giants to win this one. I don't really have a huge reason for it. I think the expectations for Deshaun Watson were too high, and his struggles that we've seen early on should not be that surprising. So I'll pick the Giants to win.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Giants plus 6 in this one. I don't think that the Giants are going to be blown out like they're 6 points isn't blown out, but I don't think they're going to be beat that bad because Texans have just underperformed, man. The Texans were supposed to be great going into this season. The Texans they're getting Deshaun Watson back. They're getting J.J. Watt back. They're getting Whitney Merciless back. They're getting all these guys that they lost to injury last year. They just got re-injured instead. They lost one of their starting cornerbacks, and it hurt them, and they've just been bad. But I still think they win because I think that the Giants are worse. But I have the Giants plus 6.
The Battle of LA at 4:05. The Chargers at 1-1 and the Rams. The Rams getting 7 points at home. I'm going to take the Rams to cover. Just like the Rams will own the Chargers in 2 years when they move into that stadium, they're going to own them in this game.
Oh, yeah. The Rams are going to cover this one. I think that the Chargers are really not going to stand a chance. I think the Rams are just too much to handle. That's what I think.
4:25, Bears at 1-1 at the Arizona Cardinals, who are 0-2. Chicago's a 4.5 point favorite at home. Poor Cardinals. It looks like it's going to be a rough year for them, so Bears cover.
I'm going to agree with you. I would have picked them to cover by 7 probably. The Cardinals look really terrible this year, so Bears cover.
Cowboys at Seahawks, 1-1 at 0-2. Seattle finally playing their first home game as a 1.5 point favorite at home at 4:25, the game of the week on Fox. I'm actually going to take the Seahawks to cover, and I know a lot of people are down on them, but they haven't played a game at home yet, and they're a lot better. They're a much better team when they play at home. I think they will do enough to come out with the win here, and I think very, very little of the Cowboys' offense right now.
I'm actually going with the opposite. I think the Cowboys went outright because the Seahawks they're looking so bad. And we don't even know Earl Thomas's availability for Sunday. He missed practice on Friday, and they still haven't said, is he going to be back? Is he going to be playing? It's still a storyline that's happening, and the Seahawks offensive line is terrible, and with the coach blaming Russell Wilson, I can't pick the Seahawks. The Seahawks are one of the worst teams in the league this year, in my opinion, so I'm going to pick the Cowboys to win outright.
Finally, the Sunday night game, the Patriots, coming off the loss to the Jaguars, traveled to Detroit, who are 0-2, facing their old defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, who put up a fight against the 49ers last week but still lost. The Patriots getting 7 points on the road. Is this going to be... Is this one kind of a trap game for the Patriots?
It could be, but Tom Brady is 34-0 against teams that are winless, and I think he keeps that up. I think the Patriots cover in this one. It is going to be rough because the Patriots are without defensive back Patrick Chung and Eric Rowe. So, I mean, their defense that already isn't that good is banged up and hurt. But I'm still going to say that they beat the Lions pretty bad because the Lions' offense hasn't looked very good, to be honest with you. I know they put up 30 on the 49ers, but, I still don't think that they're very good. They still don't have a running back when they thought Kerryon Johnson would be the guy. I'm still going to pick the Patriots to cover because they're still the Patriots. What do you got?
Well, I'll agree with you in some aspect there. I believe the Patriots are going to win pretty handily, but I think the Lions are going to come back. The biggest problem for the Lions is that they don't do anything regarding trying to run the football. They don't run the football very often. They had, I think it was 11 designed runs 2 weeks ago, and they didn't have a lot of runs last week. Kerryon Johnson is a good running back. He doesn't get a lot of touches, and that's what Will has been telling me lately is that they haven't been doing much to try to run the ball, and they haven't been putting their running backs in good position to succeed, and they're giving LeGarrette Blount too many touches too. So I guess basically what I'm saying is the Lions are going to struggle, and they're going to rely on Matt Stafford to try to come back, and it's just not going to be enough. So I'll take the Patriots to cover as well. Let's move on to bold predictions. Austin, what are some bold predictions for the Steelers and Buccaneers on Monday night?
Well, my first one is that the Steelers are going to allow no sacks or tackles for a loss on the right side of the offensive line. That's going to be the side that Chuck Wuma Okorafor or Matt Filer is playing on. Then Ryan Fitzpatrick throws 2 interceptions, and both are intercepted by defensive backs. Then my final bold prediction is that Ben Roethlisberger throws for 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and has no turnovers. Almost the exact same bold prediction I made last week, except last week I said he had no interceptions. Now he has literally no turnovers, no fumbles either. So what are your bold predictions?
Mine are that James Washington's finally going to get going with Ben Roethlisberger. He hauls in 4 passes for 90 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bud Dupree, on the other hand, continues to suck very hard. But he doesn't have an offsides penalty, so that's a bold prediction because he's had 3 through 2 weeks. Finally, the Steelers forced 3 turnovers on defense with 2 interceptions and a fumble. All right, we've gone through everything Steelers Buccaneers wise. Last thing, but certainly not least, 8:15 kickoff. The Steelers at 0-1-1 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2-0. The Steelers maybe a surprising favorite on the road at 1.5 points. What's your final score prediction?
I'm going to pick the Bucs to win outright. I think the Buccaneers win 43-40 in this one. I just don't think that the defense is going to be good enough. I think the defense is just going to disappoint us. I think this is going to set the tone for the rest of the year, losing 43-40 to the Buccaneers. I hope I'm proved wrong. I hope that the Steelers turn this around and don't lose like that. I hope that the Bucs put up only 7 points. But in reality, I just don't see that. I think the Buccaneers are going to put up 43. What do you have for this game?
Steelers are going to win this one. Bank on it. The Steelers are too desperate of a team, and the Buccaneers, look, they've started well. They're a better team than we think they are, but the Steelers are also a better team than the way they performed the last couple weeks, and I think this is a very important game for them to have. So I think They're going to win by a slim margin of 34-28, therefore covering the spread in this one. All right, Austin, let's wrap this one up. Anything else you wanted to say before we finish this one?
Nope, I think I'm good.
All righty. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions about the show, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our various social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check us out on Facebook at Stronger Than Steel Podcast. You can check us out on Twitter at Stronger_Steel and on Instagram at Stronger_Steel_NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a terrific night.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.